Let's talk about the Syrian president meeting with the Russian deputy foreign minister. What's up with that?
Well, Michael, that meeting took place today. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Ryabkov, meeting with President Bashar al-Assad. He's been in Syria for a couple of days now, Ryabkov, basically talking about this chemical weapons disarmament deal that has been thrashed out with the Americans, talking them through the process, and in his words, talking about the importance of Syria giving up the details on its chemical weapons program very, very quickly. But Ryabkov's also had a bit to say about the United Nations report into the chemical weapons incident in Damascus on August the 21st. And they've been very critical, as you touched on there. And it's perhaps no surprise, because the Russians have been saying, well, for weeks now, that any investigation by the UN into chemical weapons use would have to look at all the incidents, all the allegations, all the available information on chemical weapons use in the Syrian civil war, if it was to be considered objective. Now, we know the UN investigators were very much focused on that Damascus incident. So that is why you now have the Russians saying that their report to the UN is biased, one-sided, and unilateral and politicised, and all of these very, very critical words. It is possible, though, that some of that Russian anger will now be tempered by the fact that the UN investigators have announced they're going to go back in and look what else has been going on there, Michael.
Yeah, again, pointing to the rebels as they have all along. You know, they talk about material evidence. Is there any indication, as people have asked, about the Western evidence as well, what it is specifically?
Well, apparently the Russians have received some new evidence from the Syrians today, implicating, they say, the Syrian opposition in that August 21st incident in Damascus, but we don't know what that is just yet. The Russians believe there is a lot of evidence implicating Syrian opposition forces in other chemical weapons incidents as well. And in particular, they often talk about an incident that took place on March the 19th in Aleppo, a chemical weapons incident that killed 26, injured another 86. The UN investigators were supposed to get there before that Damascus August 21st attack took place. They didn't. The Russians, however, sent their investigative team in there a few months earlier, put together a report, gave that to the UN in July, and they say the samples that they took from on the ground there show that what happened there was a rocket, probably homemade by local opposition forces, delivering sarin, again, made on a low scale, not in an industrial setting. All of this, of course, fits that Russian-Syrian theory that it's really the Syrian opposition that have been using chemical weapons. But the point is, they say there is evidence, and they believe they have every reason to feel very strongly about the need to investigate objectively and independently all the other alleged chemical weapons incidents that have taken place in this civil conflict, Michael.
All right, Phil, appreciate that. Phil Black there in Moscow.